Okay, guys. Hopefully going to be a quick one today, only because I'm tired. It's weird, it's funny. You'd think this would be like less work for me. It's like more work for me, weirdly enough, because it takes longer to grade your assignments because they're not physical. So like clicking and then loading and then entering the grade, and then having to record the lectures on top of everything else. It's like, woof, man. So yeah, I'm a little tired. This is gonna be quick today, so I'm gonna just get right to it. We're gonna finish well, not gonna finish chapter 5. We're gonna get through most of chapter 5. We're gonna tell some stories next time, probably a little bit early next week. We'll tell some stories about chapter 5, and that'll be the end. Your test will probably be Wednesday, Thursday of next week. Wednesday or Thursday, all right? Okay, so let's get right to it. All right. We left off yesterday. Oh, did I do the screen share? No, I did not do screen share. Whoops, let's do that. Okay, there we go. Okay, we left off yesterday talking about the fact that the people of Israel wanted a king, right? So Israel, real quick, really fast review, just so we know where we're at. 40-year journey to Promised Land. Should have taken few weeks to 40 years because they kept complaining and disobeying, so God couldn't get them there. Same thing happens in our lives when we sin. Can't do what God wants us to do. We can't find his path for our life. Maybe it's like you're getting married and you meet the wrong person and you're sinning with them and you don't actually pray about it, and God wanted you to find your soulmate quickly, and maybe you missed them, or maybe you don't find them until way later because you're busy doing this. That makes sense? Same idea. Real quick little fun hint, the whole Old Testament, all the physical stories of Israel that we're going to talk about, Christians or you can take that spiritually for when it comes to sin. So all the battles that Israel fought with physical enemies, Christians we still take that as part of the Bible, but we learn from them, and it's the battles we fight against evil, against demons, and against sin. So we just take spiritually almost everything in the Old Testament the Jews went through physically. Very interesting. Okay. So just like the path in life, it took them forever to get to the Promised Land. Might take us forever to find God's will if we're too busy doing our own thing, not listening to him. All right, Battle of Jericho. Joshua leads them in, not Moses. Remember that? Shouldn't have won. God chose a side, not because he wants war or because he hates the Canaanites, because he had to bring good out of a horrible situation. All right. So they only win because God helped them. Okay, Israel's cycle of apostasy. They become their own nation, and you think they're going to do great. This is going to be awesome. No. They just keep messing up, forgetting about God, sinning, ignoring the prophets, ignoring the commandments, and then all kinds of horrible things happen. And then they cry out to God for deliverance, and God sends, you remember, a judge, military hero, to save them. Guys, this is why when Jesus came, they expected a military hero, because they had the judges of the past. They didn't realize that Jesus was going to come and save them spiritually from everything that causes wars to begin with in the first place. That's evil. Okay. So God sends a military hero, they are saved, and then 40, 50 years later, they fall back into sin. They forget what God did for them. And the whole cycle just keeps repeating. Okay, they want a king. Remember, God says, you don't need a king, you have me, right? They're like, no, we want a king. So they have Samuel, who was a very holy guy, very, very, one of the few holy judges of Israel, to anoint a king for them. Samuel's like, well, he got them out of idolatry. Remember what that is? That's worshiping false gods. That's always creeping into Israel. You know why? Again, because they would get jealous. They'd see these big other powerful nations and start to worship their gods. Because it's kind of I'll give you an example. When I went to Venezuela to see my Venezuelan friends, the first year we went there, America, we have a lot of influence in the world. So we get there, and in order to impress us, all the Venezuelan kids and teenagers were wearing American hoodies and American stuff because they love American things. The rest of the world, or most of the world, really is into American stuff. And it's kind of like that with Israel. Israel would see these other big, powerful nations and be like, we got to be like them. We want a king. You know what I mean? Or we need to worship their gods because then we'll have success like them. And God's like, oh, you don't get it. It's not about that. You're never going to find success by getting yourselves half possessed with these demon gods or the ones that don't even exist. Trust in me. So they would. That's always a threat to Israel as other gods creeping in and they start worshiping them by accident, on purpose, kind of. Because they quit trusting in God, right? The thing they wanted is a king. We want to be like everybody else, want a king. Now, that's not a horrible thing. It's not like a sin of idolatry or anything, but there's nothing really that great about having a king. And God's like, you don't need one, you have me. And they're like, no, we need a king. Okay, great. So finally, God's like, all right, I'll give you one, but it's not what you expect. It's not going to be as great as you think it is. So he directs Samuel to anoint Saul, S-A-U-L, as the first king of Israel. Now, St. Paul, his name used to be Saul. This is a completely different Saul. This is like, I don't know, 800, 900 years before St. Paul. Okay, different Saul. All right, we'll talk about St. Paul later. Okay, so that leads us into a new period in Israel. This is where we left off, and it's called the period of the kings of Israel. So Israel had the first period of judges, where the military heroes would save them. Then they have a period of kings. Then you have Saul as the first king, okay? And here's what happens to him. At first, he does really well. Like Saul, actually, Saul was humble at first. At first, Saul's like, he says to Samuel, wait, I can't be king. I'm just like a random dude. Like, he wasn't really that great. You know, he wasn't like a rich, powerful person. So he's really humble at first. And Samuel's like, no, like God has destined you to be the first king of Israel. And Saul's like, really? Like, he's all like gracious. He's grateful for it. He's humble. Oh man, I can't believe you'd pick me, but okay, I guess I'll be king. And then what do you think happens? Well, he does really well at first when he's humble. God, you know, when you're humble, you stay close to God and you obey God's laws, you do well. He starts winning lots of military victories, but what do you think happens? They go through his head. And all of a sudden he gets used to being king and he starts getting full of himself. He starts expecting stuff, right? He starts actually acting like kind of oh, I'm king, I can do what I want, because that's what happens, right? If you're not praying deeply, think about athletes and famous movie stars. I mean, like my goodness, like most people that get famous, once they get used to it, they become really full of themselves. They think they can have any woman or man they want, and they can have whatever this, whatever that, and they don't realize, you know, like that they're becoming a whole different person. That's what happens to Saul. So what happens is Saul loses favor with God. God's like, man, he's like completely losing me. He's not praying to me anymore. I can't do anything with Saul. So God he gives Samuel the feeling or the intuition, or he might actually have just spoken to Samuel and said, look, there's going to be a new king. It's going to be someone named David, okay? So God directs Samuel to anoint David as the new king, and God takes his spirit away from Saul. That means like Saul had like the courage and all these great qualities that God was giving him, but because he thought it was him and he started taking credit for it and not God and started to disobey God, God took his good gifts, his spirit, his courage, all the good qualities away from him, and he moved them over to a boy that no one expected, again, named David. So what happens when you're full of yourself and God takes his spirit away from you because you keep disobeying him and being full of yourself? Saul literally goes crazy. So once Samuel anoints David, there's like a duel, right? Like David's got a lot of followers, like a little military, and Saul's got like a military, and then Saul keeps chasing David around trying to kill him. And David's like, what are you trying to do? And at one point, David has the opportunity to kill Saul, and he doesn't, which shows how David really does have a good heart. And he's in it for the long run, unlike Saul, who kind of lost his mind. So eventually Saul goes crazy, and he falls on his sword, which means he commits suicide. All right, once he realizes that there's nothing he can do against David, God's favor, God's plan is with David, instead of just, asking for forgiveness, and which is what we should all do, just relaxing and being okay with it, trusting God, he goes crazy, commits suicide. David was a young boy. He says it's going to be one of the sons of Jesse. Jesse had like a bunch of sons, 12 of them maybe. I can't remember how many sons he had. So Samuel feels that God say it's going to be one of the sons of Jesse. He goes to Jesse's house and he says, please line up all of your sons, because God has told me that I will anoint a king with oil, and he will be the next king of Israel. And Jesse puts all the sons out there, and they're all really, like, a lot of them are older and like tough and good looking and smart. And he's looking at all of them and he's like, no, it's not you, and no, it's not you. Like, he's looking at each one and he knows for sure, he can feel, because he's very close to God, Samuel, that none of these are the ones that God had in mind. And he looks at Jesse, he's like, are these all your sons? And then Jesse says, no, there's one in the back. He's the youngest. He's just a little one, like, because it's all about age back then. He's the youngest one. He's only like 13 maybe or something like that. He's not anything. He's tending to the sheep. And then Jesse's like, Samuel's like, bring him over here. She's like, okay. So he brings brings David over there, and he looks at him and says, and he said he felt God say, that's the one. Like, he knew it as soon as he saw him. He said, this is the next king of Israel. He takes oil, just like they do with anointing of the sick, or like a priestly, when the bishop anoints a new priest, like Father Calavito got this. He takes oil and puts it on his head, and I believe his hands too, and says, you will be the next king of Israel. And he does. As he gets older, he becomes a great commander. That's what happens. David becomes the greatest of Israel's kings. So every time Israel looks back at like the greatest kings and like the greatest time when they were their own nation, the glory days of Israel, when we were our own nation and it was, awesome. They always talk about the days of King David. He was the best of Israel's kings. So you think, oh, is he like a saint? No, because remember, only Jesus is perfect, and the saints, the holiness of the saints we see after Jesus, like Saint Gemma or Maria Esperanza or Padre Pio, it's just not even close to the Old Testament because they had so much less to go off of. So David was a great heart, good king, no saint. We'll talk about that. Okay, so here's some of his achievements. Remember, Israel was made. It was a unity, a united country of 12 different tribes, almost like 12 states. But they were like not just like states like the U.S. Like they were really divided. Like they were their own kinds of people, their own families in these different tribes. So not as united as the United States are. He does a good job of uniting all the 12 tribes of Israel. They all rally behind him. Where before they were very loosely connected, they're now unified. Always a good thing. Unity, always from God. Division, not from God. In any way, your family, your friends, unity from God, division not. United 12 tribes of Israel. Second thing is he makes Jerusalem Israel's capital. So Jerusalem, you've heard of it. It's the capital of Israel today, 2020, right? How did it become Israel's capital? King David is the one that made it the capital. And then finally, he brings the Ark of the Covenant, which is God's presence to Jerusalem. So after Moses received the 10 Commandments, they put it in what's called an ark. If anyone's ever seen Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, classic, awesome movie, you know what I'm talking about. He takes the Ark of the Covenant. They put the commandments and something else, I forget what else. I think Aaron's staff that Aaron used after Moses in there, and they really felt God said his presence, like God himself, his presence would be in this ark. So there was like a tent they had, and the tent would just follow around. There's a nice big tent that they had for God's presence for the ark, which had the commandments and God and I believe Aaron's staff inside. Well, David says, you know what? No. We can't just have God be carried around in a tent. We've been doing that too long. I'm going to literally put the ark in Jerusalem, which shows that the center of our lives, the center of our country, the capital, will all be about God. So the capital city, we're putting God's presence, the Ark of the Covenant there to show that he's everything, right, to our country. Great move by David. Great move. So Israel starts to do really well because David's doing fantastic. Okay? He's doing such a good job that a really great prophet named Nathan actually comes to David. Now the prophets, God spoke through the prophets, right? Some of them have miraculous gifts. They can read hearts, predict the future, kind of like the stuff you see in the saints today. Nathan goes up to David and God speaks through Nathan. And God says to David through Nathan, because of all the good things you're doing, God makes a promise to you, David. Your descendants will always rule Israel, and eventually someone really, really cool is going to come who's going to be a descendant of yours, and he will be the greatest of anything Israel's ever seen. He's going to truly save Israel from all of its enemies. You guys can take a stab at who that is, right? But he says it'll be someone from your line, a descendant of yours, because of what you're doing. And this promise God will never take away. And David makes some pretty big mistakes later, and it just goes to show how good God is because he never takes that promise away. It does all happen as Nathan predicted through a very special person that's going to come later. He probably guess who it is. Okay, guys, make sure you know this. This is called the Davidic covenant, meaning the covenant of David. So God's making his new covenant, right? Like first covenant was like with Noah, never going to destroy the world again by flood. Then his real covenant start with Abraham. Then covenant 2.0 with Moses is like covenant 3.0. He keeps updating and making his promises, his deals, his covenants better with Israel. So after David starts doing such a good job, it really touches God's heart, and God's like, one of your descendants is going to rule Israel forever. Like he's going to be the Messiah. And until then, many of your descendants will continue to rule Israel. You'll have a line of descendants. It won't stop until that Messiah comes. That's called the Davidic covenant. Please make sure you know that. Nathan says it to David. Okay. I think this is the last slide. So you think, oh, great, David's doing such a great job. This is awesome. Israel's going to be a powerful, awesome country. And weirdly enough, in the Bible and historically, no, it doesn't. Israel ends up falling apart. What happens? Well, David has a son named Solomon, okay? And at first, Solomon is doing a really good job, okay? He becomes the next king of Israel. At first, Solomon's great. The prophet, I think it was Nathan, or one of the prophets, comes to Solomon and says, hey, God just told me that you can ask him for whatever you want right now, and he'll give it to you. And you think Solomon's going to ask for like, oh, God, give me like power, give me wealth, give me like women, give me like whatever. You know what I'm saying? Make me the greatest of all kings. Solomon does a great thing here. He goes, I just want God to give me the gift of wisdom to know what the right thing is and how to please him all the time. And then I think it's Nathan says like, that's a great choice. God's really proud of you for not asking for something stupid or sinful. So good for you. And it says that the Bible says that Solomon becomes one of the wisest person in the world at that time, right? So actually, they were doing good under David. Under Solomon, those first few years of his reign, Israel is the biggest and most powerful it's ever been. It is one of the most powerful nations around. It's never been that way because Solomon's doing such a great job. But guess what happens? Oh man, he gets incredible. Oh well, we'll talk about what happens. We'll talk about the negatives in a second. He gets amazing wisdom from God because he asked for it. And Solomon's big accomplishment is he builds this huge temple to God in Jerusalem. Huge temple to God in Jerusalem. So the Ark of the Covenant goes in this temple, and it's gigantic, and it's like a great thing, and the whole nation's like, this is amazing, this huge, awesome temple we never has before. God has a dwelling place. It's beautiful, okay? So things are going really, really well, and Israel's becoming very powerful. But remember what happened hundreds, thousands of years before? Seth's descendants, remember Adam and Eve have a son named Seth, and he's good. He's got a lot of good descendants, but then he also has, Cain's descendants who are bad. And some of the men from Seth's line find the women from Cain's line who aren't good. They find them attractive, and like they marry them for shallow reasons, and they get brought down. They get all messed up. That's what happens with Solomon. Solomon goes against God and sins when he starts to take tons of he had a girl problem, right? He was a little addicted, and he takes tons of foreign wives. Number one, God's not big on having multiple wives to begin with, and secondly, foreign wives. Remember, God's making all these laws for Israel to keep them away from everybody. Don't let sin in. Don't let anything negative in because it'll corrupt you. This is before Jesus. There's no cure for sin yet. If big sins, demons, demonic stuff gets in and infects Israel, it could bring down the whole nation. There's no cure. So God says no foreigners. You're not allowed to marry any foreign wives. Don't let any foreign cultures, customs in. He literally does the exact opposite. They say hundreds of foreign wives. And what's the problem with this? Well, what do those foreign wives believe in? They don't believe in God. They believe in all those demon things that everyone else around them is worshiping. So what does Solomon do? Well, these wives want little temples made for their own demon gods. And Solomon's like, okay. So he starts making temples for all the demon gods from these foreign wives. And it brings tons of demons in. Tons of demons. What's the first thing the devil does when he gets in? He tries to divide. The devil will try to divide your families. He'll try to divide your friends. He'll try to divide countries. The devil will try to cause division and hatred and anger and like clashing wherever he can. And that's exactly what he does. As soon as all these demons come in from these false gods and infects Israel, and the 12 tribes all start clashing again, and tons of division happens. So these wives bring sin and worship of false gods into Israel. Division and hard times come. Make sure you know that. Division is always a sign of the devil. When people are divided and against each other, mad, nasty, unforgiving, devil. All right. Solomon dies, and shortly after he dies, the kingdom actually splits into a north and a south. 10 tribes in the north, 2 tribes, Judah and Benjamin, in the south. That's where Jerusalem is. It's in Judah. And then there's other tribes in the north, and it splits, and they don't like each other, and they decide not to talk anymore. And guys, Israel's already tiny to begin with. Can Israel possibly defend itself against all these big nations when, number one, they're kicking God out, worshiping false gods, and number two, they're not even united to defend themselves? Of course not. So what happens? Well, over the years, first the north falls, right? I believe the Persians invade the north, and they conquer it, and it falls. And like maybe 100 years later, the south actually holds on to the faith pretty long. The tribe of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin, they hold on to the true faith. They don't worship false gods for a while. They have some good little kings come in those areas, but eventually they fall too, and they're both invaded. So Israel is no longer a nation. So they split into a north and south, then they get invaded, and the whole country falls apart. So now they're no longer their own nation. So you can't call them Israelites. Israel's not a nation, a real nation anymore. And so now they're scattered throughout different countries. So all the Israelites get scattered throughout the countries that invaded them. They're no longer one place. They're everywhere in the Middle East now, and they're now called Jews. Why are they called Jews? Well, because the north starts worshiping all kinds of gods. So they're not even really Israelites. They're not really part of the God's true nation anymore. So what does Jew mean? The name Jew actually means somebody who belongs to the tribe of Judah. The Judah and Benjamin, those two tribes in the south that really held on to the faith for real and never let go. Even after they were conquered, there were many, many, many Israelites that never let go of their faith, never stopped worshiping God, and they were from the tribe of Judah, and that's why they are today, 2020, today's day and age, they are called Jews. Pretty cool, all right? So they were called Hebrews. Then they get to Israel, they're called Israelites. Israel falls apart. The tribe of Judah holds on in the south, but even they get invaded, and they get scattered throughout the Middle East, and they are now called Jews. Great. Okay, so here's what's crazy, though. You think God gave up. All right, Israel's done, fell apart. No, God still didn't give up. He still holds to his promise. That's how good he is, right? So during these hard times, still God sends prophets to the Jews, those from the tribe of Judah that are scattered, that are still holding on. Prophets come and they keep saying, hey, it's okay. Keep worshiping God. Keep obeying the commandments. Keep reading the Torah. Keep doing all these things. Keep celebrating Passover, because there's going to be an incredible Messiah that's going to come soon, and he's going to reunite the 12 tribes of Israel again. Now you say, Mr. P, wait a minute. The Messiah must not have come because the 12 tribes of Israel, they're not reunited. Well, they were never reunited. Well, yeah, they were. It's called the Catholic Church. When Jesus came, he reunited the 12 tribes, but he started a whole new religion through the Jewish faith. That's the church. You guys are the reunion of the 12 tribes of Israel. Pretty cool. Okay. So some of these prophets you might have heard of, these are the prophets that come to the southern kingdoms, even after they've been invaded and messed with. And they're Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Elijah, I believe, like Amos and like other prophets that come, and they're like encouraging the Jews to hold on to the faith, even though Israel's not a nation anymore, and wait for that Messiah to come. So these prophets promise Israel will one day be reunited, and a Messiah, which means anointed one, will come. And that brings us to 2,000 years ago. Who's in charge now? The Romans. Rome has invaded that whole part of the world, the Middle East. The Jews are still scattered throughout there. They're not a nation anymore, and they're just hanging out under Roman rule. Rome is dictating over them and has conquered them, that area. They're just waiting for that Messiah to come. Guess what? He did. Okay, we're going to stop there. I'm going to give you a link on Google Classroom to this cool video of the actual Jerusalem temple that Solomon built. I think you might like it. Okay, have a great day, guys. And yeah, hope you have the rest of the day goes well for you and that you're doing well with all your assignments. Let me know if you have any questions at all. Okay, see ya.